Let's go. So this is a session to help cleanse and clear negative energy. First of all, let's talk about what negative energy is and what it isn't. We have two schools of thought. Something is only negative if we perceive it to be negative. That's a really bold statement because of everything that's happening in the world right now. I mean, it's a pretty big thing to say, right? I mean, there are a lot of negative things that we can all agree on that are negative, but it is a subjective thing. What's negative for one is not necessarily negative for the other. And so the idea with this portion of the workshop is to understand that something's only negative if you make it negative. And there's a reason behind the fact that you're making it negative. You're either fearful, or you're worried, or you're anxious about X, Y, and Z. And that is why it is perceived as being something negative for you. Does that make sense? So if something is negative for you, the Course in Miracles speaks about how there are two main emotions. There is either emotion born from fear or emotion born from love. Okay. And so for us to think of something being negative, there is an undercurrent of fear that is sweeping that into the negative pile. So before we do any of these practices, I find that it's really important for us to become really clear on why are we fearful of it or anxious because of it. It's fair and well to do energy hygiene and to keep our energy clean and stay in the positive and think happy thoughts. But that doesn't really address the issue that is underlying the fear and anxiety. So I kind of explain it to my clients as that you can go for a facial once a month, but if you don't keep your skin clean in between your facial appointments, you're probably going to break out on your skin or something's going to happen, right? It's not going to be as clean as it could be. And it's the same thing with this. You know, there's different layers of energy hygiene. You can go and see an energy healer and they can cleanse your energy once a month. But if you don't do it by yourself, same thing. You can cleanse your own energy daily, but if you're not getting to the root of the cause, if you're not understanding where the energy blockages are occurring or why you have this quote unquote negative stream of energy in your body, then also it's just going to be one of those hamster wheel scenarios. So if we can consider for a moment that energy is always in motion, always, 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 it never stops running. What it can do is become stagnant or stale or kind of stuck. It doesn't mean it's not moving. It's just like really, really struggling, right? And the idea with knowing, or the reason that it's important to know that is because for us to cleanse our energy, what we're doing essentially, and for us to remove negative energy, is for us to actually open up our energy channels so our energy can run freely within the body, so that it doesn't get stuck in the bottleneck of that stagnancy. So when we experience an emotion that we are struggling with, perhaps we have an extreme amount of anger that we're experiencing within. We're angry at something, someone, fill in the blank, but we don't allow ourselves to express that anger, that emotion, that energy is not in motion because the emotion is not being expressed. And so what happens is when that energy is not in motion, that's when it becomes stuck in the body. And that can lead to dis-ease or disease. Everyone following me here? This dis-ease or disease can be mild at first. It can be a niggle. It can be a little something, something in the body. It can be whatever we're experiencing, a headache or anything physical in the body. Once it's reached the physical body, then we can assume that it's actually been out in our thoughts or in that's our mental body or our emotional body for a really long time before that. You with me? So there's good news in that, is that we can actually catch these quote unquote negative streams of energy, these blockages, before they reach the physical body. We need to do a couple of things, and that is, number one, what I mentioned at the beginning of the call, is always make sure that we're looking for the root cause of what it is that we're experiencing. So we're not just, energy hygiene is great, it's amazing, it's better than not. But if you're not researching into the self to try and understand the root cause of it, you're going to be that hamster on the wheel. So the first thing is to always try and understand what the root cause of it is. And the second thing is, in order to do that, one must find a stillness practice or a ritual that you can do and perform where you are always keeping almost like an eye out, like your feelers are out. You're every morning spending some time with yourself, asking yourself these questions of, how do I feel? How do I feel different today? What's going on in my psyche? This is really what the questions are all about. What did I dream about? Do I feel anything in my body today that I didn't feel yesterday? Or is anything left my body that was there yesterday? And so all of these ritualistic practices really help us in becoming sensitive or attuned to things like energies, emotions, stuck emotions, any of these words that I've been using that we may not recognize when we're just on the go all the time. So for those of you who know me, you will know that I've been banging on about a stillness practice for as long as you guys know me. Stillness, 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 whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. And in that stillness is where you're checking in. And that becomes part of what we call svadhyaya in Sanskrit, which is self-study. Curiously looking within, curiously starting to understand what's making me tick, So the energy cleansing practices that we're going to learn today are great. They're amazing. But it's important to know that they're not just a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. You don't just do that and then carry on with your life. There's layers. You sit back and you understand how you're feeling about said event. And then as you're digging to the root cause, as you're unveiling the blockages, that's when you're able to then create this lasting, sustainable change in your life. Are there any questions about that? Makes sense, right? Yeah. All right. So ritual is really important. And feel free to type anything in the chat. If you don't want everyone to see it, you can type it to me personally, and then I can answer the question anonymously as well. So there's ritualistic practices. Why do we include tokens, things like crystals, or sage, or essential oils, or whatever, sounds? Why do we include that as part of our ritualistic practices? Does anybody know? Or any reasons? We don't know.
Is it like an anchoring?
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That kind of every day that you're doing it, it's that you reach for what you need in that time.
Yes, that's exactly. Like, it's one of the main reasons that someone would reach for a tool. So the tool's not going to do it for you, but it does act as an aid, a support. There are many other reasons, which I'll just scratch the surface of, but we don't have time to go into like the myriads of them. But for example, there are many ancient cultures and traditions that believe smoke clears and cleanses energies. So this is why we use sage and the smoke of sage. Have you seen a sage stick before? Yeah, any smoke. And this is not just Eastern traditions. If you look at Catholicism, for example, how they, when a new pope is ordained, how there's the smoke that comes out. You guys seen that? Like, smoke is ritual. I was brought up in the Roman Catholic Church, and after every mass, the priest goes around the church with a little triangle, a canister with frankincense in that's lit. It's the actual resin. And then sweeps the canister around the church to get rid of any stale, stagnant energies. They call it spirits that are left behind in the church. So we talk about these new age practices. They're not at all new age. They've been around for forever and ever. It's just that we are creating almost new types of ritualistic practices from them. So know that these practices are divine. They are divine, and they are whatever you make of them, and they are sacred. And it's all fair and well to go buy a sage stick and then just like swish it around, and that's totally fine if you want to do that. There is never any judgment. But the more intention you bring to a practice, the more sacred intention you can bring to a practice, the more that practice in itself will serve you. There are two things that are required to move energy, two main focus points. And that can be a combination of any of the following: movement, breath, focus, which can be divided into convergent and divergent focus, which is focus on a particular thing or awareness, right? They're all the same thing. Well, they're different things, but of the same nature. And visualization, touch. When you bring two of those aspects together, when you're doing them both at once, you're moving energy. Simple. So simple. I don't think a lot of healers want you to know that because they'd be out of work. So the idea here is that when you want to move energy, you do two of those things and you're like, it's a done deal. Give me an example of how you could do that. Like, you probably already do them now. If you're already practicing energy cleansing, then you're already doing it. Anyone? No?
That's like when you do the Reiki that you showed us in the 5-day course that we is the touch and the breath together.
Exactly. Diala, I visualize white light around me. Beautiful. And I'm guessing you would be breathing deep breaths when you're doing that. Done. Michelle, to raise. No, you didn't want to. You can talk, babe.
Sorry.
Okay.
I accidentally clicked something with that. I didn't mean to say.
But you can raise your vibration.
Yes. Like say using the crystal as in like using it in motion, like to cleanse
Yes.
Like with the selenite wand or whatever, to using, so you're sort of visualizing, but as well as the movement to cleanse energy.
That's exactly right. So the other thing about using crystals and essential oils is that they in themselves, because they come from the earth, they have their own vibe. They have their own living vibrations. And one can speak about various aspects of how that can be. But the most important is to remember that they need to be pure essential oils, like they need to come from a plant and not be adulterated. And the same goes for crystals. I went this weekend to purchase some crystals from a store where I know they're reputable crystals. They're not people who purchased rocks and then sprayed them to look like crystals. So the same thing goes with anything that's of nature. It needs to be 100% nature, right? And so when we start to use these tools like a selenite wand, let me just pop everybody on the mute. When we start to use like a selenite wand, we're using the crystal properties, and selenite in itself is very, very cleansing, yes. And we're watching it, and we're focusing on it, and we're moving, and we're probably doing deep breaths, because by now you're probably at that point when you are cleansing, that breath is a really important part for you. You're actually focusing on the breath, whether it's nose breathing or whatever. So everything that you have mentioned right now is exactly how you cleanse this energy. And if you are experiencing, quote unquote, a negative energy, a blockage, or something that is worrying you or making you anxious or concerned, the way that you cleanse that energy whilst you're in the process is to think about that emotion. So natural tendency for us humans is to run away from the emotion. Also, I was just having a chat with someone earlier, which made me think, it was like, it's unspiritual to feel anger, or I just need to bring compassion to the situation. And I love the fact that this is the way that we're starting to think, but also we need to allow ourselves the opportunity, which it is, to move towards the emotion so that we can clear it, so that we can bring it up and move through it. It's almost like, you know, we get to the point where we don't allow ourselves to feel the negative emotion, but when we don't do that, we suppress it and we hold it so deep within us that it actually starts to stagnate and create issues within our bodies. So as you're cleansing, as you're doing your breath work or your visualization, one of my favorites is my HeartSpace meditation. So I take my left hand onto my heart and I put my hand on my high heart. So in chakra medicine, we talk about the 7 chakras, the 7 energy centers, and different lineages will talk about different amounts of chakras and energy centers. They're all right. It's just the traditional form of what we speak about is 7. But there is a little extra added benefit here, is that you have 2 heart chakras. You have the collective heart, which is right in the center of your chest. And we don't talk about the heart space as being like the actual heart. We talk about the space which is in the center. And then you have the high heart, which is individual. So collective consciousness, individual consciousness. So when you're doing a heart space meditation, or when you're trying to activate the heart chakra, you can choose, if you are doing it for yourself, to actually have your hand higher on the high heart, right? And then I like to place the left hand on the high heart and then the right hand on the left hand being all that is feminine and yin and soft and gentle. And if I'm working on collective consciousness, if I'm meditating or I'm looking to like ease the quote unquote negative energy of the collective, then I'm going to place my hand on the mid heart, on the actual heart space, and work with that. And I'm just breathing. I'm breathing deep into the heart space. And then if I want to supercharge it, I just bring a visualization into it. Janet, that's totally fine. Bye, darling. Thanks for letting me know. Thank you. And so as you are breathing and visualizing and touching your heart space, you've got all of these things kind of happening at the same time. Cleansing. Now you're thinking about the negative emotion or the thing that's making you feel antsy. You're just supercharging that again, because you're bringing the emotion up. It's kind of like you're moving towards it. It's lifting it out of the body, and then you're cleansing it whilst it's at the surface. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's not good enough anymore to sit on a meditation pillow and just beam love and light. You know, it's not good enough anymore, because the whole point of working through these practices is to integrate the shadow self. It's to draw that which is so deep within us, all of our wounds and our trauma. It's about, in a very safe and holistic way, drawing it all up to the surface so that we can work through it and eliminate it. And in so doing, we naturally allow for the collective healing to occur. Because the one thing that I'm noticing a lot of now, particularly over the last few months, is the amount of shaming and blaming and anger and all of these, you know, really heavy emotions that are going on in the world. And there's a place for them. Like, we need to be angry about what's actually happening in the world, or what has been happening. But where the problem comes is where we are not, when we are managing the situation from our own trauma. That's the problem. That's the problem, is where we are looking at the situation from our own wounds, as opposed to having healed our own wounds and then approaching from a place of wholeness. So when we work with self-healing, and when we work with creating these practices, particularly if we are looking to instigate change, particularly if we are looking to create sustainable change, not only for our own lives, but that of our family and our community, we actually need to come from a place of wholeness where we don't take the collective wounds as personal attacks on us. Because this is what is happening. There are things that are going on, and people are becoming personally attacked by the collective wrongdoing. And whilst that has its place, I'm not saying that you can't be angry for what's actually happening, but when you meet that in the middle after having been integrated and coming from a place of wholeness, then you're able to actually attend to the situation in a much more graceful and impactful way. So cleansing our negative energy is really about accessing our own wounds and sewing them back together, the psychic trauma that we have experienced that we have not yet had the courage or the know-how to address. And so once we actually allow ourselves to move towards those shadows, that's where things actually start changing, because you're removing the stagnancy in your body, you're lifting your vibration ultimately, because we know that negative emotions create dense, heavy vibrations. And ultimately what we're looking to do is raise our vibration and come at life with like a really high vibrationary state. So when we're looking at this negative, when we're trying to cleanse our negative emotions, it's really important to know why they're there in the first place, draw them through, in and up, and then know how to actually move them. And now you know how to do that. So it takes courage, it takes consistency, it takes devotion, and it also puts you in a place of very deep responsibility, because you know that you can't make a collective change or collective difference sustainably unless you are the one who's gone through your own shadow first. Yeah. So when we, you know, I've had so many clients speak to me over the last couple of months about the negative, heavy collective energy. And this is my answer to it. It's, we only reflect that which is in us already. And it's such a touchy subject, because if the person you're speaking with has the trauma and the wound, then nothing you say is ever going to be enough to heal them, because you can't heal them. You have to heal yourself first. And hopefully that spills out and helps them become whatever they're meant to be. So, have I given you some good practical examples of how you can cleanse your energy and what that means? Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording so you guys can ask me questions. Yeah, personally.